Good day, folks. Discussing what the BJP and their trolls and their IT Salamat Malvias up to, creating buff stories about this Prime Minister and this Home Minister and how they're working hard to kick the butt of Corona. Let me just tell Amit Malviya, these guys and all the people, all the basic lightweight followers of हाँ में हाँ मिलाने वाले जो हमारे मंत्री हैं, प्रधान कहीं भी मत दिखाई दे रहे। कहाँ हो आप? पीयूष गोयल छोटी छोटी बातें करते हैं और छोटे छोटे आदमी हैं, छोटी छोटी बातें करते हैं। और बेकार सीतारमन जिसकी इकोनॉमी अब सिंक कर रही है, कहीं नजर नहीं आ रही। और वो स्मृति ईरानी जो इतनी बोलती थी, वो कहाँ है? अमेठी में लड़ेंगी, हम ऐसे करेंगे, हम वैसे करेंगे, और मोदी जी ये करेंगे और मोदी जी वो करेंगे। सबसे बड़ी चेली कहीं नजर नहीं। और जोकर नहीं, जोकर नहीं, वो क्या है हमारे लॉ मिनिस्टर मिस्टर प्रसाद, जब उन्होंने बोला ट्वीट के बारे में और उनको बंद करने के बारे में, उसके बाद कहीं दिखाई नहीं दे रहे। कहते हैं ना, डर में चूहा अपनी बिल में भाग जाता है, वही हाल अब इनका हुआ है। ना आरएसएस नजर आती है, आरएसएस भी ऊपर चढ़ के बोलते हैं, क्या पता नहीं क्या क्या बोलते हैं कि हम ऐसे करेंगे, गंदे नेगेटिविटी ना फैलाओ। नेगेटिविटी, you're catching Rahul Gandhi for negativity, for people who've died, people whose friends have died, whose family has died. Every day bodies floating. The country doesn't need to be told that they be positive. We've done that for these guys all their lives. Be positive. After demonetization, be positive. मेरे ऊपर विश्वास कीजिए, मेरे ऊपर विश्वास कीजिए। Yeah, let's talk about this famous Gujarat model which was dumped on us, and we got everybody from the Gujarat cadre now managing India, whether it's the CDR, CBI, the PMO. But here's the good thing that I want to tell you about it. Gujarat's retreating state, the reality. Two models, Gujarat and UP, when you see where we are going. Government's withdrawal from public healthcare system has put it in league of Bimaru states' worsened COVID crisis. He says, the retreat of the state from essential infrastructure and the privatization of the health industry, in turn, it left the state organs unprepared to deal with the pandemic. Just in terms of hospital beds, Gujarat fares worse than most of India. Data from Center of Disease Dynamics, Economics and Policy show that there are 138 hospital beds in the country per 1 lakh population, which itself is a shame. While in the rich industrial state of Gujarat, this number is below 100. Hear that, folks? Even socio-economically backward regions like Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh have a better hospital bed availability with 123 and 130 beds per 1 lakh people respectively. The same holds for critical care beds, okay? Get this. Even in times of the pandemic, the state government cut capital expenditure on public health infrastructure. As opposed to the budget estimate of 914 crores, it spent only 737 crores in 2020 and 21. Folks, they are leaving you to die, right? What's it? The state's withdrawal from the public healthcare system in the last few decades, a phenomena that runs parallel with economic liberalization, has put its track record on health indices in the league of the so-called Bimaru state. As per the NFHS 5 2019-20, close to 80% children in Gujarat under the age of 5 years suffer from anemia. Not only is this figure worse than in Assam and Bihar, it is a jump of nearly 17 percentage points from the record in NFHS 4 2015-16, when Gujarat was already performing worse than the national average of anemic children. Almost 40% of the children under the age of 5 years are stunted in the state. Amongst women aged between 15 and 49 years, 65% are anemic. As per this thing, a rise from 55% in 2000. So this is the state, folks, of Bihar. This is of Gujarat, right? A rich state. And the model which is being dumped on the rest of थोपा जा रहा है सब जगह। जय बिहार में भी हम गुजरात मॉडल लाएंगे, हम वहां भी नहीं आया। बंगाल में शुक्र है नहीं ला पाए। Under a BJP dispensation since the mid-90s, movement for rights are abhorred and questioning. The state provokes repressive measures. So what he says is that basically the moment you ask something, they jump all over you, right? Perhaps it's not surprising that the destruction of an infant welfare state
which lies at the crux of its present inability to deal with the pandemic, took place at a time of democratic black backsliding in Gujarat under Modi, carried on with Rupani. The systematic underestimation of the numbers of casualties by the state reflects the same trend, folks. More after the week. Now we'll talk about the beautiful Yogi Bisht's model, which is nothing but all lies, folks. More. So the last readout about Gujarat was by Christopher Jaffarlaw and Sharik Laliwala. And things in Gujarat are out of control, and the pictures that have been coming out of Ahmedabad and Surat is just heart-wrenching, right? And let's talk about UP, where there is another movement by this guy to try and pretend that he is holier than God, right? And this one's written by Ali Khan Mahmoodabad and Gillis Verniers. It says, list of don'ts. State denialism and repression add to COVID devastation in UP. Rot is not not in party in power. It says, among the states affected by the second wave of COVID-19, Uttar Pradesh exemplifies a mix of incompetence and callousness that has characterized the Indian state response to the crisis the most. UP is witnessing some of the most brutal effects. No oxygen, no ventilators, no hospital beds, shortage of medicines, overcrowded crematoriums and cemeteries, and black markets. The crisis is compounded by a government that insists that there is no shortage and points to relatively low official numbers of positive cases and deaths. Recent data shows the testing went down by 20% 2 weeks ago as test positivity increased to 18% in the same period. Testing has since gone up in the state, but now they're using the fast test, which is also fudged, right? Beyond denialism, the COVID positive Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath announced that citizens reporting shortages would be detained under National Security Act for spreading rumors and spoiling the atmosphere. Oh, this is what everybody's up to in the BJP, right? Lucknow is merely the tip of the iceberg. Far away from the state capital, the stories of suffering in small villages are yet to be adequately reported, and now explosive with those 80, 90, 100 bodies found in the Ganges floating down from UP. Big trouble, right? There is pattern in UP of deploying state machinery and using the law for extrajudicial goals and unleashing state repression, and that's all they're doing, right? He says people across all classes, castes and religions are affected. Civic response to the crisis has been the only source of light in this darkness as people unite to help each other in life and death. Okay? In the aftermath of the pandemic, such solidarity may pose the biggest threat to BJP politics, which relies heavily on sowing division. So watch out for that as the elections come up. The BJP may later seek to project the epidemic as an act of God or a foreign import. Wow, act of God. What happened to? I thought our Prime Minister, everybody treated him as God in the Bhakt tribe. I thought he was God, right? However, actually Rawat does think he's God. The Chief Minister of that, what is that state, Uttarakhand, which is also totally destroyed. Like God's not helping him, right? But it's God's own state, right? However, while the virus may be a force of nature, the BJP government's response to the pandemic has exposed the heartless, instrumental and calculating features of their politics, where everything is subordinate to political and electoral gains, folks. That's all we are. We are just numbers, folks, numbers. To this mix of incompetence and callousness, the UP government has added denialism and state repression. India need not have suffered on the scale. Just see, man, last full year, crores has been spent building this image of this guy from UP. Every ad, a big guy here, small guy here, big guy, all the ads, everything, in my opinion, if you can't save your lives of your people, unless you actually want them dead, is just BS, right? Because look at what is this? He is now uses this law the worst, and I'm glad the High Court or Supreme Court is finally looking at it. He says Supreme Court to review validity of law on sedition. Even British law on sedition has changed. I think, when you get people like you and you get people like our guys in the center, this law becomes, I know it was badly used by the Congress, but these guys have upped the use of this stuff, right? And somebody rightly said, Lancet, India squandered early success. Government must own up, revamp response. Lancet says, Modi government bid to stifle criticism, open discussion inexcusable, the editorial says. He said the attempt to stifle criticism and open discussion during the crisis are inexcusable, the editorial said. The outcome were to happen, Modi's government would be responsible for presiding over a self-inflicted national catastrophe, the editorial said. Folks, hear this. I know everybody, all the bucks are going to get up, jump around and say that everybody's trying to nail Modi, but he needs to be nailed, right? The government must publish accurate data in a timely manner and forthrightly explain to the public what is happening and what is needed to bend the epidemic curve, folks. And that is the reality and reality check that we need to face, and you people all need to ensure that that happens. So we have, with this depressing situation, a counter-attack from Mr. Mr. Nada, BJP president, counter-attack. It says, with the government and the party coming under severe criticism for the pandemic management, the BJP leadership has decided to step up its effort to counter the opposition's attack. Counter with what? With lots of puff pastry of Mr. Modi working 12 hours, Amit Shah working 18 hours with long beards and sweating foreheads. But no good, folks, because the guys who are bhakts are coming out of the woodwork. Anupam Kher, the biggest bhakt and kiss ass of them all. Time for government to understand there is more to life than image building, says Anupam Kher. Another guy, this guy, Markarand Arpanajpe, says from the PM it is time to course correct. He's another kiss ass. The national leadership must display more humility, care and compassion. I want to tell this guy, if they had that, they would have showed it this far. Maybe they just don't have it. He says Modi's image has certainly taken a beating. That's an understatement. It is therefore time to introspect and, if necessary, course correct. How? For instance, to show more humanity and humility. There is no humanity, there is no humility in the DNA of these two guys, folks. And when Priyanka Chaturvedi writes, and this is the important part, stop this puff business. Priyanka Chaturvedi, no minister, Javadkar must know he cannot shrug off centre's responsibility for COVID crisis. The minister says despite public health being a state subject, the central government has been proactive in COVID management as a pandemic requires national level coordination and substantial resources. He seems to have forgotten that once the WHO declared a pandemic, the centre invoked the Epidemic Act, the Disaster Management Act and Essential Commodities Act, which gave it overriding power over the state governments. And that, folks, is the truth. What shame. A drug transfer of army-based hospital commandant raises eyebrows, and apparently it's not a routine transfer. It's because he refused remdesivir to VVIP BJP guys. VVIP. And look at that. This is what we're trying to cover up. Villagers dying of COVID for want of care. High Court to UP government. Days after Ghazipur, 12 bodies found in the Ganga in Balia. Increase in sighting of floating bodies, villages along UP-Bihar border, right? Superintendent of 14 health centers offered to quit Harris. This is now in Unnao, again in UP. What the hell are the guys going to do? Bodies found in Buxar, not from state, says Bihar. Toll reaches 76. 12 in Gahamar, 76 bodies recovered in Mahadeva, 52 bodies spotted floating in Ujwa. It is gone ballistic. What did the BJP guys say? Didn't foresee villages being hit. UP BJP chief, where the hell was he living, man? Where was he and Bisht living? They're all strutting around in army hospitals. They should not be allowed in there. And finally, opposition comes out. A letter to PM opposition, let leaders seek free mass inoculation. Yeah, come on, opposition, especially the Congress. Get out of your goddamn writing in pigeonholes, man. You gotta get out like the Youth Congress and be there and be out there, folks. Cheers.